Isn't it lovely to see flowers blooming and the birds chirping and doing their thing? I've got some really fun and easy outdoor garden decor ideas for you. Let's get started. Today I'm going to show you what I do with some of these garage sale finds that I just picked up over the weekend. I've got a lot of rusty and crusty and old things to work with, so stay tuned and come along with me as I create some beautiful decor. First, I'm going to work on this big pot. This is something that I found at the garage sale for $2 and I thought it was beautiful. I really love the crackle in the green, but I wanted to switch it up a little bit and make it a little bit more farmhouse looking. So the first thing I'm going to do is spray it with Rust-Oleum Clear Matte Finish. And the reason I'm doing that just on the shiny part is to make sure that my paint sticks. I'm going to paint the green portion just with sort of a dry brush, but a little bit thicker than that. Just one really rough coat. I want to have a little bit of that green showing through. That will also give it some texture along with the brush strokes that I'm using. I'm just using a regular flat white house paint that you can buy right off the shelf from Walmart. You don't always have to use chalk paint or specialty paints. You can definitely just get away with regular household paints. That's one of the reasons why I spray all of my shiny projects first with the matte clear finish. It gives this regular household paint something to grip to. I had put my paintbrush down and taken a step back and then decided that I really didn't like the way the brown and the white now was kind of clashing. So I'm just dry brushing whatever's left on my paintbrush with the white, and look at how all of that beautiful detail is just starting to pop. So I'm going to continue doing this for the bottom, and I'm also going to do the rim all along the top. Last year, I made myself a lemon tree, and I actually replayed that video for you a couple of weeks ago. But it's just in this simple coffee can, and I wanted to upgrade this tree a little bit. So I thought my new pot would be the perfect addition to this lemon tree. I'm going to take it all apart, just got a whole bunch of foam in there and some rocks down at the bottom, and it is hot glued like 90 to the bottom of this can. So I'm going to work on getting that out, and then I'll show you how I redo it in the new pot. I do a lot of woodworking, and all of these little bits and pieces that are scraps, I always hang on to them, and this is the perfect opportunity to use them. I'm going to go ahead and tuck them into the pot just flat because I want to be able to just elevate my lemon tree a little bit higher. I don't want it sitting all the way down to the bottom. So I'm just going to keep on working with all of these pieces of wood, wedging them in, making sure that they fit really well and they're nice and snug. I have a larger piece in the bottom that's going to be the base of where I'm going to be able to glue the actual lemon tree on. So I'm adding a few more, just hot gluing them to make sure that they are secure. And then I'm going to go ahead and use some more hot glue and add the lemon tree. And then I've just got to hold it until the hot glue has a chance to set. I'm going to reuse the same foam that I had in the can, just wedge it all the way around and make sure that the styrofoam that's holding my branch or my tree is going to stay really solid. I don't want this to wiggle around when I move it. I'll also add a little bit of hot glue around the edges just to make sure all of that foam stays in place too. Finally, I'm just going to reuse the moss that I had used in the coffee can and just lay it around on top. I don't have quite enough of this type of moss, but I don't have anything left in my stash. So once I head out to the store, I'll be able to grab a little bit more. But I think this elevated my lemon tree to a much higher level. I think it looks absolutely gorgeous put together with this pot. All of these crusty things I got for $3 at the garage sale, so I think this pot would have been about $1. Anyhow, I just decided to clean it up and I'm going to be adding 3 of these little spindles as feet. These were the top of bedposts and I just thought they're the perfect color to complement this pot. Using my Weldbond glue, I'm just going to put them on and just set it aside to dry. Now, this did take a couple of days to cure just because it was a little cooler outside. My idea for this rake head was to put it on a board. I'm just using my Hoto brand new tape measure to measure that it's 14 inches, and I already have a board that's painted here that's about 22 inches. I decided to lay the rake head down. So the part where the handle would be is going to be the top of the wood board. And I'm using some of these pipe straps to hold it in place. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm just pushing in a little screw. I'm switching out the driver bit for a really tiny drill bit because I need to do some pilot holes for the eye hooks that I'm going to be using to hang a chain, which will then hang the sign. So super easy to change things out. You just spin the chuck around and it opens up or closes however you need to do it. This is a tiny little drill bit. I'm just going to eyeball my spacing and just give it a little bit of a push. So easy to do. Pre-drilling the hole makes it super easy to just hand tighten the eye hooks right into it. And then I'm just going to use this chain that I got from the Dollar Tree. They have them on their baskets, I think. So I just grabbed a couple of baskets and I just pulled off the chains, and I'm going to go ahead and use this to hang my little rake hook. And I think this turned out really sweet. Last year before Christmas, I had bought a couple of these rugs, one in black, which is this one, and one in gray. They're about $3.50 at my Dollarama store because they're about twice the size of the ones you can get at the Dollar Tree. I didn't end up doing anything with them, so I had a great idea to make a cute little welcome mat for my front door. I went to my Cricut and I cut out the word welcome on some vinyl, and I'm just going to stick it down here and have a really tough time peeling off the transfer tape. And I'm not going to take you through that struggle, but I finally got it to stick. I'm using some of the white multi-surface paint, and I'm just using a stencil brush and I'm pouncing up and down and making sure that I don't have any bleeding underneath my vinyl. It actually worked out really well. I tried using some chalk paint. That really didn't cover very well, so I ended up going with the multi-surface paint, and that seemed to do the trick. I did end up doing 2 coats though before I was finished. With the 2 coats, I didn't think it was going to be dark enough, but look at that. It turned out really well, and I'm really pleased with this multi-surface paint on the black. I do have to weed out a couple of areas, but then I'm going to be good to go. Also using my Cricut and some of this plastic poster board, I cut out a square template because I wanted this to kind of have the look of a buffalo check border, but it's not going to be 100% buffalo check. So basically white squares and black squares. And again, I'm just using my stencil and that multi-surface paint, and I'm just going to pounce to my heart's content until I get the border done all the way around. Using the same plastic poster board and my Cricut, I cut out another stencil. This is a couple of lemons with a few leaves, and I'm going to do the leaves in the green, and of course the lemons are going to be yellow. I've already got a couple that are stenciled on there. They didn't come out as solid as the others, but I'm okay with that. I think it looks kind of nice when it's not 100% solid. It gives it a little bit more texture and a little bit more dimension. Once I had my lemons done, I just took one of my oil-based paint pens and just drew a rough line connecting all of the white squares. It didn't have to be perfect, and I like it when it's not perfect because that's the rustic in me, and it was really easy to do. So it looks really good with that extra line as the border. Now it's time to do some freehanding. I'm using a stencil brush, but it's not a round one. It's more of a straight one or a flat one, maybe. And what I'm doing is just creating some lavender stems. And this is so easy to do. You just kind of put these little oval shapes and make them a little bit bigger as you're going down, or you can leave them all looking the same. It really isn't rocket science to do something like this. What I would suggest is if you want to do something like this, practice on a little bit of paper first until you get the hang of it, and then head on over to your rug and get creative. Using the same green paint that I used for the lemon leaves, I'm going to add some stems and a few little leaves to my lavender sprigs. And I am so pleased with how my rug turned out. This is going to be sitting on my front porch for the summer. I think it's perfect. My first project is using this Thrifted Bread Box. I've sanded it down and I'm going to give it a coat of clear matte sealer to block out any of the stains. Then I'm going to take it outside and using my flat white spray paint, I'm going to give it a couple of good thin coats. You want to make sure that you don't put it on too heavily because then it'll end up dripping. I'm also using my favorite spray paint trigger from Krylon. I do have it listed down in the description box. I've also got it on a piece of cardboard so I can easily just spin it around while I'm painting. These are some spindle feet that I cut down from a bed that I picked up off the side of the road. Lucky me, I was so excited when I found it. I'm going to just drill some holes right into the center of each of the little spindle legs because I need somewhere for the screw to go when I attach it to the bread box. Here I'm trying to figure out where I want to put the legs. Ideally, I would want them in the corners, but at the top here, there isn't an extra piece of wood. So I decided that putting them on the inside would be too close together. I'm going to go get a piece of painter stick and another little piece of wood and see if I can match the thickness of the bottom piece. I'm going to use my favorite Weldbond glue to attach both of these wood pieces to the bottom of the bread box. Weldbond glue is a permanent hold and it sticks to anything. So you can glue wood, metal, plastic, glass, ceramic, anything. It'll work. That's why I love it because I only need one glue for all of those different materials. Now that the glue has set up enough for me to be able to work, I'm going to use my drill and drill a hole at the bottom of the bread box in each of the four corners where I want the legs to be. When I'm doing projects like this, I usually wing it, which means that I don't measure where I need the holes to go. I just eyeball it. But if you need to measure, go right ahead. There's nothing wrong with that. I just am a little bit lazy when it comes to stuff like that. So I just want to get the job done. I made sure to make the drill holes big enough that I could just slide the screw through from the inside. Then I'm going to use a screwdriver to hold it in place and then take the leg and just screw that in. And it turns out super tight and secure. I'm just going to repeat the process for the other three legs. I created some cute little decals using my Cricut Joy, and I'm going to put them on the bread box. So this bottom one has a spade and a rake, I guess you would call them. I can't remember the name of the small ones. And just the words garden tools. Again, as usual, I will have these listed on my website as free printables for you. So just go down to my description box and click on the link free printables. I don't usually show you the process of how I take the transfer tape off and work with these decals, but I thought I would show you today just because the letters were giving me a little bit of an issue and I wanted to just show you how I take care of that. So sometimes it'll start to peel up. And for example, the shovel right away was peeling up. So I just use the soft end or the rounded end of my Cricut tool here, the weeder, and just burnish it down a little bit more. And that just helps to make sure that the letters will stick properly. Another tip I have for you is if it's not coming off when you're pulling the transfer tape off in one direction, try switching the direction. So here it was still giving me issues. So I just started going from the bottom instead of the side. And then I ended up having to use my little weeding tool to actually pick it off the transfer tape and stick it down. That capital G just did not want to get off that transfer tape. I love how this bread box turned garden toolbox turned out. It was a special request from my mom, who lives in an apartment and didn't have anywhere to store her garden tools on her balcony. So I created this little thing for her, and she loves it just as much as I do. And I hope you guys love it too. My first project is using this Nautical ship's wheel. This is just literally up on my computer screen. I made it bigger, and now I'm just going to tape a regular piece of paper onto my monitor and trace it out. For the purpose of my video, I wanted to use a black marker so you could see what I was doing. Unfortunately, it did leave a couple of black specks on my monitor screen. So you need to use a pencil, colored pencil, something that's not going to go through onto your computer. Here's the fully traced picture, and now I'm just going to cut it out. Now, what I ended up doing was just cutting a circle all the way around so I'd have less paper to have to handle. And then I started cutting out the actual picture itself. Once I had the stencil all cut out, I laid it down on some contact paper. This was just shelf liner from the Dollar Tree. And then I used an X-Acto knife to cut out the shape again. And now I can use that as a stencil. I'm using some Krylon spray paint, which is really good for resin and plastic like this. And the color is called Global Blue. I'm going to do 2 thin coats and a third in a couple of spots. Once it's completely dry, all I have to do is peel off the stencil, and I have a fun ship's wheel design on my patio table. I'm starting out with this oval wood cutout from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just giving it a coat of matte clear polyacrylic. I want the color to be a little bit deeper, and you can see it does get a little darker, but I didn't want to stain it. I'm using a combination of white and natural woods in this project. I made this decal using my Cricut Joy and the Cricut Design Space app, and I will have it available as a free printable. You just need to go down to my description box and click on the link Free Printables, and then you'll be able to search through all of the things I have available. Next, I'm going to be using these painter sticks and I'm going to make a crate. Now, if you've been following me on my channel, you know that I love to make wooden crates. I know you can get the ones from the Dollar Tree. I didn't have any of those on hand, and because Ontario, where I live, is on lockdown, we don't have access to any crafting supplies right now. So I've got to create my own stuff. I'm cutting 6-inch pieces, and what I do with these painter sticks, because they're fairly thick and hard, I score it a half a dozen times, and then I take my miter shears and squeeze one way, and then I flip it over and squeeze the other way because the bottom part makes a mark on the other side. So I keep flipping it and squeezing and flipping it, and eventually I get to the point where I can just give it a good squeeze and it'll pop. These 3 6-inch pieces will be the front of the crate. This will be the inside, so I'm just holding them together with a piece of popsicle stick and some hot glue. I cut 6 more pieces. These were 2 inches in length, and those will become the sides of the crate. I'm just going to go ahead and glue all of the pieces together, and then I'm going to use some of the larger tumbling tower blocks as braces for the corners. I also needed a bottom for the crate, but here I just put 2 pieces in because I just needed something that was going to be able to hold the floral foam in. I had given this palette just a little bit of a touch up with white paint, and now that it's dry, I'm going to distress it with my favorite color, black. I love to do distressing with black. I don't know, the combination of white and black just makes me happy. Using hot glue, I'm going to apply the Flower Market sign to the top of the palette. I'm gluing 2 of the tumbling tower blocks to the back of the little crate because that's going to help me secure it onto the palette. Using a tiny little drill bit, I'm going to drill 3 holes about 1.5 inches apart, but in the same level on one side of the palette. I'm going to be placing these beautiful little tacks in the holes. I'm also going to be using some of my Weldbond glue to make sure that they stay put. And these are going to be the little hooks for my little mini garden tools. The first 2 went through to the back, so I just put some hot glue on them to make sure no one gets hurt. Using a larger drill bit, I'm going to put a hole in the handle of each of the little tools so I can fit a piece of twine through, and that will become the hanger for them. These little mini garden tools were part of a houseplant garden set, and I got them at Dollarama for $2.50. I couldn't pass them up. They are absolutely adorable. Now it's time to get some greenery in my little flower box. I'm going to just place some hot glue in there and glue down some floral foam, and then I'm going to start working on adding some greenery. I wanted this to be more greens than florals, so I added a few different types of just greenery plants, and then I added a little bit of the baby's breath that you can get at the Dollar Tree just to add a little spice of color, but they're white. So I guess they're not really colorful, but I think it turned out pretty adorable. I love this sign and I hope you like it too. Oh, and I forgot to tell you that I also added another little decal to the little box, and I think that just added the perfect touch. The second project I have for you today is this raw wooden crate. I did take it outside already and gave it a little bit of a sanding. There were some rough edges on it. I'm going to be painting it with just some latex paint. This is a color, it's called Mushroom, and it's left over from when I painted my great room. I really like the color. It's very similar to Waverly chalk paint in Mineral, I believe, but I'm just going to give this one coat because I have some other plans for it as well. I'm going to turn this crate into a vintage garden crate. I'm using these stencils that I picked up at a dollar store a couple of years ago, and I'm just going to cut the letters in half and then pop out the insides. I'm going to use the charcoal Rust-Oleum chalk paint color and the makeup sponge to apply the paint to the stencils. I'm going to put lettering on all four sides of this crate. This side will have the word herbs on it, and the other side is going to have seeds, and then I'm going to put something different on the slatted sides. I'm also going to add a couple of hand lettered words. On the top, I'm going to put organic and local on the bottom. And when I do my hand lettering, I always start in the center of the word. So A was the middle letter, and that's where I started, and then I work my way forwards and then backwards. That usually helps me to get the word more centered, but as you can see, I'm a little off today. I think it'll look okay once I've got everything complete. I'm always seeing some vintage crates with the labels kind of off kilter a little bit, so I'm not too worried about that. To make the crate look even more distressed, I'm just going to sand down the words a little bit, and then I'm going to use bare dark wax, and I like to apply the wax with a soft rag. I usually use an old t-shirt, and I'm just going to layer it a few different times just to make sure I get the color I want. The last thing I'm going to do is take that makeup sponge that I used to apply the stencils. I'm going to add a little bit of the charcoal chalk paint every once in a while, and I'm just rubbing that makeup sponge all the way across in a few spots just to give it more of a dirty and scuffed up look. On the opposite sides of the herbs and seeds words, I stenciled in the number 4, just using a few of the different sizes of stencils that I have in the same type of design. My second project for you today is using this thrifted candle holder, I think. I don't really know what it is, but I think it's meant for a candle, and it's wire, and it's this beautiful green color. I love the color, but it is missing one of the pegs. So I want to camouflage that a little bit. So I'm using some of this white cotton rope from Dollarama, and I'm going to start weaving it in and out at the bottom and go up about 4 or 5 rows just to give this a little bit more of an interesting texture. I'm starting off by hot gluing the rope where that broken piece of wire is, and then I'm going to weave in and out all the way around in a circle and glue it every once in a while. Mostly when I get back to the center, I'm going to do that again. And I'll do this, like I said, about 4 or 5 rows until I like the look of it. Here's where I thought I would add some of the rope in the center a little bit, but I really didn't like how it was working out because the wire sections were farther apart, so it didn't look nice and tight like it did down at the bottom. So I ended up just pulling this out and skipping it. Now I need to cover up the broken piece at the top. So I'm going to go ahead and start at the very top, just winding some of this cotton rope all the way around, and then I'm going to go down about 3 inches and then tuck in the last little piece and glue it in place. Here you can see what I mean about going down a few inches. I'm just gluing probably a couple of times on the rope each time I spin it around, and I just want to make sure that I cover that broken piece. I love using these little birds and tiny little creatures in my farmhouse design. So I found this little bird. He was part of a wind chime set, so that's why he's got all these little holes. I'm just using some of this dry deck spackle, and this is my absolute favorite to use. It's the one that is pink and then dries white. But the other thing I really love about this is you don't have to really sand it, especially on a something like this, which is ceramic. I just actually took my finger and rubbed it all off nice and smooth. And I wanted texture on this little bird, so I didn't mind if there was a little bit of a bumpiness to it. I gave my little bird a couple of coats of white chalk paint, and now I'm going to mix up a green wax to go on top of it. The first color is Antique Sky from Martha Stewart chalk paint, and that's already in the bowl. And now I'm just adding a little bit of the Eucalyptus, which is the darker green shade. I have a bottle of Folk Art Home Decor clear wax, and I'm going to add some of that right into my bowl and mix it together, ensuring that it's all blended together nicely. And if I need to add any more color, I can do that as well. So here's my little white birdie. I'm going to use a really soft brush to apply the wax, making sure I get it really heavy in, not super heavy, but heavy enough in all of the cracks and crevices. Once I have it the way I want it to look, I'm going to take a baby wipe and just gently dab at the raised areas to bring out some more of the white, and the green will stay in all of the cracks. The last thing to do is use a lot of hot glue right on the very top and put the bird down so he has a cute little perch on top of this lantern. The last project I have for you today is using this spindle that came from a bed that was at the side of the road. And this round wood disc is from Michael's. I can't find any of the ones that they have at the Dollar Tree. My Dollar Trees don't seem to carry a lot of wood crafts. So I went to Michael's and I found these for $1.50, which is only 25 cents more than I would have to pay at the Dollar Tree, since in Canada you pay $1.25 and sometimes $1.50 for items at the Dollar Tree. I'm using the gel stains again, but this time I've blended maple and walnut together because this original spindle has a bit of a reddish tone to it, and I wanted to try and match up the wood round as best that I could. So I'm just putting it on with a old piece of t-shirt. I'm going to go ahead and let it dry for a little bit, and then I'll add a second coat to darken it up a little bit more. While I wait for this stain to fully dry, I'm taking this tin bucket. Now, this is something I've had in my stash for a really long time. I honestly don't even remember where I got it from, but I'm taking it out to my garage and I'm going to give it a couple of coats of flat white spray paint. Now my disc is dry, so what I'm going to do is apply the glue to it. I'm going to use my Weldbond glue, a really nice amount on the outside, and then I'll use some hot glue on the inside to make sure that it stays secure while I continue to work with it. I'm also going to add a bead of the Weldbond glue all the way around because I want to make sure that this stays really secure. It's a gift from my neighbor. She's the one who had the bed and put it out at the curb because it was broken in a couple of spots. I found out that it was her great-grandmother's bed and decided that I needed to give her something as a reminder of the bed. She's an avid gardener, so I thought making a nice little pedestal pot might be the perfect gift. I'm drilling a hole that is the same size as the screw I'm going to be using in the middle of the spindle, and I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom of the pot. I don't want to use just glue to put these two together, although I am going to use a bit of hot glue to just help secure it a little bit better so it doesn't wiggle. But I decided that I wanted to put a screw down the center of the pot and into the spindle. Now comes the tricky part, being able to see that screw hole in the little screw hole of the pot. I did get it a little off center, but I was able to find, there it is, there's the hole, and I was able to put the screw in just using my ratchet screwdriver. So what I did next was try to get some of that glue the same color, and it really wasn't working out. So I'm taking some of this rusty wood filler. It's a rusty color, not rust itself. And I'm going to go ahead and fill that in, wipe off any of the excess, and then once this is dry, I'll be able to sand down the excess again and give it a nice coat of stain. I used a baby wipe to go across the spindle and just pull off any of the extra wood filler that was there so I wouldn't have to worry about trying to sand that off. To add the final touch for this pot, since I don't know what type of decor they have in their home, I decided to keep it simple. I'm going to add some of this jute rope just in between those two ridges there, so it'll have a nice little design. And then I'll add a simple little shoestring bow with some jute twine. I love how this one turned out. I love the simplicity of it, and my neighbor really loves it too. I've already given it to her, and it's going to be a really sweet memory of her grandma. This magazine rack was painted white already. It's been sitting in my closet and waiting for a makeover. Rather than getting it into the trash or the dumpster, I decided to add this to my little vignette on my fence wall. I'm using the same Parisian gray paint and giving it the same type of distressing that I did for the watering can. This is probably one of my all-time favorite stencils. I picked these up at Hobby Lobby when I was in Texas about 6 years ago. I don't have Hobby Lobby here in Canada, so it'll be really exciting to be able to get there one day again. I'm just going to tape this on. It's the perfect size for this piece, and I'm going to use some makeup sponges with green and black paint, and I'm just going to go ahead and do some different designs on here using the colors sort of opposite. So I'll start with the green, fresh flower, then the black will be market, the seed stems and blooms will be green, and then the florals and those little lines and stems will be black and green. Removing the stencil for me is always the best part. I did get a tiny little bit of bleeding on the blooms word, just the B there, but I'm okay with it. This looks so pretty. Just wait till you see it on my fence. I am so excited to share that spring and summer has finally arrived here in Canada. We've had some wonderful weather, so I was able to get outside and do some decorating in my yard. So that's what I'm going to share with you today. First, I'm giving this tag sign a couple of coats of white chalk paint. Then I'm going to take a stencil from Essential Stencil. I'll have it linked down in my description box. And this is just a watering can with some florals. I'm going to just use some black paint and give it a good stenciling with my makeup sponge and clothespin hack that I like to use. In order to hang this tag, it needs a hole, so I'm using a really large drill bit, and I'm going to drill all the way through and just make sure it's a nice big hole. Before I add some rope into the hole, I'm just going to take the sponge with whatever paint it has left over and just kind of run over the edges of this tag sign just to give it a little bit more of a distressed look. I'm also going to take the sponge a little bit across the front of it too. I hope you enjoyed these outdoor garden decor ideas and got inspired to do something fresh and new in your backyard, patio, or deck this year. Thank you so much for watching. I truly appreciate it. Bye for now.